What is up, creatives? It's Jahrell, and I'm back. And I'm glad to be back. You know what this channel is for. I'm Jahrell, your music technologist, and I'm here to help you master the tech you need to make music freely. And I do weekly live streams, giving tip and tutorial videos as well as gear reviews and things like that to help you make dope music. So if you enjoy that kind of content, hit that like button, go ahead and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you know when I drop a new one. All right. That being said, I'm stoked to get into today's content. We're going over the basics of BeatMaker 3. Now, those of you that have been, rocking with the channel for a long time, I did a video on this very topic kind of towards the beginning of when my channel started, in 2020. And I went over the basics of BeatMaker 3. It's definitely my most popular video right now. But some things, I noticed, when going back and watching that video, there's some things missing in there that are kind of new to the way BeatMaker 3 functions now. And I wanted to kind of address those. I wanted to just go back, refresh, give everybody from the ground up, how do I get started in BeatMaker 3? And how do I get started, doing this iPad music production thing? And that's what we're going to tackle tonight. And for those of you that know BeatMaker 3, you've been using it, this might be a good refresher for you on just exactly what you can do in BeatMaker 3. So I'm going to do my best to make this as simple as possible, as well as to the point as possible. That being said, let's do this. So this is BeatMaker 3. Normally when you open up BeatMaker 3, the very first thing you're going to see is a screen that says new session, open session, and I forget what the third option is, but new session, open session are the ones you're going to use the most. Obviously, if this is your first time, you will go ahead and click new session. So this is the first thing you're going to see in BeatMaker 3 once you've started a new session. This is a brand new session. Right here is a blank set of pads. These are what you will use to play your things in on your iPad, but there's nothing in there right now, so we can't play them. Over here, we'll talk about what this is, but this is basically a tab where you would, do different parameters with what you're playing over here. So this is what I like to call the bank tab, and there's 4 different sections over here. So let me pull it up where you can see it. So we've got the bank tab right here. Next up is what I call the sample tab. And the sample tab is where you can do all of the very powerful sampling that BeatMaker 3 is capable of doing. You can import a sample right here, or you can load a plugin in right here where you could record in some audio that you could use as a sample. And then over here is where those things will go to the pads, and you can play those in on the pads and play them in live in real time. Next over is what I like to call a playlist tab. So this is the playlist tab. This is the tab that I personally spend the most amount of time in, is in this window. This is where you're going to do all your sequencing. This is where all your audio clips are going to go. All of the MIDI data that you've played in, that's all going to go right in here. And so, you can add banks here, you can add aux channels, you can add audio channels, and then you have your main out. And you can press the track button here to add anything you want. So that's the banks, audio tracks, and aux tracks can all be added right there. The fourth and final of these tabs is your mixer tab. And in here is where you will go in and do all of your mixing. What's great about this is each one of these you can tap to expand. And if you have multiple instruments on your pads, they will all show up here. And you can mix them separately. And that's that. You can double tap to go back out. So basically I double tapped there, double tap again to go back to this mixer tab page. All right. On this left side is the software keyboard button. The reason when I pressed it, it didn't do anything is because I don't have any instruments loaded. Once I have an instrument loaded, I can just simply press this button and it'll pop up a little software keyboard where I can play in things on the piano, which is great. Next is MIDI effects. You can add MIDI effects here. Next is audio effects, which can be added here. And all you have to do is click this plus to go through these lists. This is a list of the stock effects that come pre-installed, and then you can just hit audio unit to reach any other effects that you have in there. All right, and then down here is your macros tab, which is the last tab. These are kind of these 4 down here are kind of just your effects tabs. This is where you can, tweak anything that you already have going. And so the macros tab is a set of knobs, 1 through 16. So here's 1 through 8. If you press this, that's 9 through 16. Basically, what this is for is mapping any parameter that you want, really, to a knob that you can just play live and affect. And that's really convenient. It's almost like a built-in touchscreen MIDI controller. If that sounds complex or complicated to you, don't worry about it. You really don't have to use the macro tab if you don't want to. So the main tabs you want to focus on are these four up here. So just for review, we have the Banks tab, the Sample tab, the Playlist tab, and the Mixer tab. Okay, up here is your settings. This is where you'll go to do any of the behind the scenes fixing and stuff that you need to do. This is a chunk that I use a lot. This is MIDI devices, your input devices. If you have any Bluetooth MIDI devices, those will show up right in here. And you can pair a new device just by clicking this Bluetooth button here, and you'll see a list. And if your Bluetooth device is turned on, you can just tap and connect it. So things like my X-Key Air here, as well as things like the Sensal Morph, other Bluetooth MIDI controllers, you can connect that way. Over here in this bottom left corner is where you will do basically any of your syncing. This is a little more complex, so this isn't something you have to mess with right away. But if you have a lot of MIDI controllers and you're going to be playing things in, and you want everything to come in sync, you would use these kind of options using MIDI out, MIDI in, or Ableton Link, which this does support. Down here in output devices, this is where you would output MIDI if you wanted one of your controllers to control the tempo that comes out. I know this is kind of all technical jargon, but I'm just going over it so that you know what it is, even if you don't use it. Up here, this list is actually pretty important. This is the audio list. So up here is background audio. I have that turned on. What that means is if you swipe out of the app and music is playing, it will continue playing even if you swiped out. You can turn that off to where it will stop the music as soon as you've swiped away. And that's entirely up to you. Output sample rate, I have mine set to 48,000 hertz. That is not something you really need to mess with at all. I personally do all of my music at 48 and I output in 48. Some people do 44.1. You don't really need to mess with it. Latency, I have that set to 256 right now. That's actually kind of important. And what that is that has to do with a delay between what's going on your screen and what you're hearing. So you want that delay to be as low as possible as your iPad can handle. If you have a lower quality iPad, like something that's a little less powerful, you want to choose one of the higher options. If you have something that's more powerful, like an iPad Pro, you can go with something a little lower. Most of the time, 64 does not work though. Regardless of what you're doing it on. MIDI focus actions, I've done a whole video on this, you can check that out, but this is how you would custom map your MIDI controller to BeatMaker 3. Over here is settings and behaviors. I'm not going to go over every single one of these, you can kind of tinker as you see, but the important ones to remember are the rescan database button. I generally press this button almost any time I do a lot of importing of samples. If I have a lot of samples that I bring into BeatMaker 3, like say the first time you want to bring in your audio clips, you're going to want to press this button once you're done. And that will make sure everything is showing up correctly in your sample library. I don't think you really need to mess with anything else. Yeah, let's move along. All right, so that's pretty much the settings tab. There's more in there to tinker with if you need to, but remember, we're just trying to go over the basics today. So up here is your transport control. Just like in any other DAW, you have a set of controls. So obviously you're probably familiar with these. You've got stop, play, record, rewind, fast forward. This is the loop button, which allows you to set your loop in this playlist tab. So this little loop here, I can turn it on or off. And I have an undo, a redo, and a save button. So any of you, if you're new to music production, get nice and cozy with the save button because you need to do that a lot in case you don't really want to lose anything that you were working on because of any issues. So the last thing up here is this doesn't really look like a button, but it is. This is called the track helper. The track helper is really important and it's really easy to overlook it because it's pretty inconspicuous. So what this does is basically anytime I play anything in or create a pattern in any instrument, it'll be listed here. And we'll see this as we're going to make a beat today as well. I didn't mention that, but we are going to make a beat in just a bit. But all of the patterns that I make will be in here and I can go in and click and drag them and bring them over. bar. This right here is going to tell you, what bar you're on, how many beats, or you can tap it once to show you how many seconds and minutes and milliseconds are in your track. Then you've got the tempo selector right here. So this is, you can set your tempo here. You can either tap in a tempo, just like that, or you can go ahead and press and hold, or sorry, double tap to type in a tempo. Or you can even drag left to right or up and down to set your tempo. You can press the double tempo button to go up double. You can press the half button to cut it in half. You can change your time signature here, and then you have your swing options, so you can, set some global swing. If you're getting value out of this video, please go ahead and hit that like button. It definitely helps out the channel. It pushes this up the algorithm. It also fine-tunes your suggested feed with more great content, not just from me, but other creators that do similar types of content. So definitely hit that like button. I appreciate it. And right back to the content. So right here is our metronome button. You can turn it on or off. Quantize. This is quantize. I know I'm going a little quick here, but stay with me. Quantize is where you can basically make anything that you've played in using MIDI, you can make it all line up with your metronome, and you can set different parameters to make that happen. You can have it set to on as you're playing it in, so it will quantize what you're playing as you're playing it, or you can set it off and then you can quantize it later. Generally you can keep it on if you're worried about not being really good with your timing. Right here is automations. Generally, if you're going to automate any parameters, like basically where you're turning a knob or changing anything in real time and you want to record that, you got to make sure recording automations is turned on. Yeah, generally keep it off if you're not doing anything like that. You can also turn on or off the quantize for that. Alrighty, so that gives you this whole top bar. So in the playlist tab we have song, scenes, and pattern. Now pattern you can see is grayed out because we haven't made a pattern yet. The best way to make a pattern is to play something in, which we can do. Or we can just go to the track helper and press create pattern. And there's pattern 1. It just created it for us. So if you go over here, boom, this is pattern 1. And this is basically a full-on piano roll. This is a whole playlist here. So this lists out whatever instruments we have. Obviously all of these are empty. And then if you go up and press this keyboard at the top, that brings you to the real piano roll here. Where everything is visible once you've played something in. So that is the playlist tab. This is a really important tab to get the handle of because you'll be using it a lot. All right, we're almost done with the tour and then we're gonna get to making music. So up here, if you press this little hamburger menu, you get another set of things to think about. So over here is the new, as in create a new project. Then there's save as well as export. So if you press save, you have the option to save it as a name. We're gonna go ahead and name it today's date. So 5/25/21. Okay, now we've saved it. Now anytime we go in here and press save, we can just press save or rename or save as. So if I don't like that name, I can change it at any point. And then there's export, where you can export either your audio or your MIDI. This is where you'll get to get your finished tracks. After you've already made your song, this is where you would get your finished track. So this is your search tab. This is where you go to find anything that you need. This is all my sessions here that I've made. They're all listed. This is banks. These are basically instruments that either came with BeatMaker 3 or instrument collections that I've saved myself. And you can load any of these into a bank just by pressing on it. This one has 2, so I'll just select this one and I will hit load. Notice I have A1 selected here and I will hit load bank. Now that kit is loaded into this bank. So that's how you load a bank, and that's basically how you're going to get your instruments unless you're using plugins. So next up is samples. This is a list, just a straight list of any samples you've imported into BeatMaker 3. If you need some help on how to import into BeatMaker 3, definitely check out my video on my channel called How to Import Audio Files and MIDI Files into BeatMaker 3, something like that. Over here is plugins. This is where you'll go to get your audio units or your inter-app audio, or how you can interact with Audio Bus. Generally, the one you're going to want to be concerned about is Audio Unit V3. And I've done a whole video on that as well. audio units for BeatMaker 3. This is the gold standard for plugins on iPad. Any kind of software instrument you want to bring into BeatMaker 3, that's how you would do it. And you know, some of you guys might have heard of like VSTs. If you're someone that's coming from a desktop doing music production, VSTs are also a type of plugin. This is what we call them on the iPad, is AUV3s. Cool. That's this whole, you know, library tab. Right here is where you're going to go for all of your files. Anything related to files is in this top little icon here. And the one you're really going to care about the most is imports, because that's where I keep all of my samples and I have them categorized. And you can do that through your Files app. We're not going to go into that though. Over here, you're definitely going to want to take a quick trip over to the BeatMaker Sound Store, because BeatMaker 3 comes with 3 free packs. And so that's the BeatMaker 3 Starter Pack right here, the BM3 Starter Pack 2, as well as Thud Rumble. Those 3 come free when you buy BeatMaker 3, which goes for $26.99 in the App Store unless it's on sale. And so you'll have to go in here and download those. So that's one of the first things you're going to want to do when you get going on BeatMaker 3. Cool. So that is pretty much the tour. If anything else pops up, we'll kind of address it in context as we're producing. But there it is. So let's get started making a beat from scratch right here live. I actually have a sample that I want to use, which is something that you guys, you know, might want to do. I know the samples are pretty popular, loops. In this case, I made my own sample, my own loop, came from one of my older songs, and I'm going to do it as an audio file. So what I'm going to do is hit this plus track button, and I'm going to hit new audio track. Boom, there it is right there. Now I'm going to select that audio track. I need to get an audio file into this. So I'm going to press this hamburger menu here. And I have all my files saved in my imports folder. So I'm going to navigate there right here. So there it is. Go to imports. And let's bust out that pencil. I go to my samples. And then I have one called basic sample. That's what I saved it as. Boom, right there. All right, and right now is when we can hear what that sounds like. So this is what we got. When it gets to the end of this loop, it'll loop back. Cool. So I can turn on my metronome, make sure that lines up. It should line up because I made it this length. Cool. All right, so we're set. Let's get some drums going. So let's go ahead and hit this button here. I'm not going to use any MIDI controllers because I really want to keep it basic. And other than that sample, I'm going to try to use only sounds that are either built into BeatMaker 3 or are from those free kits that come with BeatMaker 3. So all of this stuff you'll have access to, except for that one sample that I'm starting with. All right. So I like this kit right here that I've already added called Ash's Kit. Got a kick, snare, hi-hat, open hi-hat. We can play everything in right here. So let's go ahead and add in some drums. All right. So we've got everything set. We've got to make sure Ash's Kit is record armed. It is. That little light is red. We want it to be red. And then we are going to go from the beginning and record. There we are. We got drums in. And there's our MIDI data right here in the playlist tab. All right, now I think I want some hi-hats. Let's do that. So one of the things I love about BeatMaker 3 is there's these tabs up here that let you control how you play things in. So right now I have the hi-hat selected, AK hat, and what I can do is I can trigger it and I can change the velocity. So softer, louder, Oh, I accidentally clicked something. Okay. So you go down or up, and that changes your velocity. This little fixed velocity thing here, if I drag this down, basically sets the volume of what happens when I press this pad. So now it's lower. See how it's set right here? Drag it up to the top. Now it's coming in at top volume. Now this right here is what I really like. It's the roll tab. This allows you to do different values of notes. We got quarter notes here, and we got eighth notes, eighth note triplets, 16ths, 16th triplets, and 32nd notes. All right, so let's get some hi-hats in. So I noticed that there's a couple things in there where it didn't line up exactly right when I was playing it. I'm sure it came off a little bit wrong. So let's go ahead and see what I did and see if we can fix it. Let's listen. So far so good. Yeah, that was one spot. So I had the notes come in a little early. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double tap on this pattern, and it's going to pull up this MIDI data that I've played, and I can zoom in and I can change anything I need to change. And to me, I can tell that it's that note right there, this one, that I need to delete, and I can edit it. So if you're not super comfortable with editing the MIDI that you've played, it's okay. Just undo and do it again until you get what you want, until you're comfortable going in and editing stuff like this. All right, so let's see what we got. Okay, so hopefully you guys are tracking with me right now. We've added drums and we've got a sample. The next thing I'm going to do is try to add, I don't know, let's get a bass in there. We'll click the plus button, create new bank. Boom, now I've got a new bank loaded right here. And then I can go over to the banks tab, which is right here. Let's go ahead and hit this hamburger menu. We'll go back here and press banks right here. I remember there being a good one. I used this in my original video, but a good one called Summer Sub. That one is free, and we'll load that up. I'm going to go ahead and connect a MIDI controller so that I can play something in. Then the MIDI controller I'm going to use is the CME X Key Air. You can use any MIDI controller, really. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and I'm going to sync it in the settings tab like I talked about before. Under MIDI, press this little Bluetooth button. There it is, says not connected. Connect it, and there we go. Hopefully this won't give me any issues. All right, so all I gotta do is press this record button. 2, ready, and. All right. Okay, so sorry, I'm doing things without explaining. Let me stop for a sec. So I just played it in. I was listening to it. It sounded a little loud. So what I went in and I went into this mixer tab here, and I started adjusting levels. So we've got this Summer Sub here, and I was just dragging it down a little bit. It seems a little loud. Same thing with the drums, because we were tending to clip over here, and that's why I was double tapping those things. So my goal is to try to get it to not clip. I might have to just turn the whole volume down. And here's what we got so far. I think we got something good going so far. That right there, I think, is a good start for you when it comes to basics. A couple things to think about that are awesome about BeatMaker 3 is really easy to duplicate any instrument that you've made. You know what? Matter of fact, let's do one more thing. Why not? Why not? All right, so we got this audio clip that I added in. Say I wanted another version that was higher than this one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and press and hold on this channel. I'm gonna hit duplicate, and that's just gonna copy it and just make a new one. So I'm gonna go to this one now. I have the bottom one selected, and I'm just gonna mute the first one. We'll go to the second one, and I'm gonna go ahead and I wanna make this one a higher pitched one. So all I need to do is tap it, hit edit. We're gonna go and make sure we got live stretch turned on to high quality. Go to edit sample, process, stretch and pitch. And I'm just gonna turn this up to 12, which is 12 semitones, which is an octave. You don't need to know that, but that's what it is. Apply. And now we should have one that's an octave higher. Okay, and we can play it right now. Hey, I think we got something. That sounds pretty good. So, always remember to hit save. That right there has been the basics, the very basics of BeatMaker 3. And if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know down in the comments about anything I covered. I tried to really mind how fast or how slow I was going and try to get as many details as possible without giving too much information. But hey, definitely check out my playlist called BeatMaker 3, just BeatMaker 3 playlist, list of videos, and I'll try to remember to link that down in the description if it's not there already. So, question of the day. What's the most exciting feature that you saw demoed today in this BeatMaker Basics tutorial? Is there anything that just really excites you about getting started? Definitely get started. Make some music. An iPad is a great option when it comes to diving into music production. So that has been it. Until next time, creatives, go make something dope, and I'll see you in the next video.